Today we're talking about a story about 77 minutes that left a permanent scar on American history. We're going back to July 18, 1984, in a quiet community called Santa Cidro, California, where a chain of events led to an absolutely unthinkable outcome.
And right away, that's what law enforcement on the scene was saying. It's a staggering statement, you know? It really captures the unbelievable scale of the violence. It instantly set this event apart and forced the whole country to confront a new, terrifying kind of horror.
You know what makes this so chilling is where it all happened. Santa Cidro was a border community, and this McDonald's, well, it was just like any other McDonald's in America. It was a hot July afternoon, you had kids out riding their bikes, families just trying to grab a meal. It was as normal as it gets, a completely ordinary backdrop for the terror that was about to unfold.
So, to really understand what happened here, we have to look at the man who walked through those doors. Who was James Huberty, and what on earth could have led him to this point?
Well, on paper, Huberty was a 41-year-old welder. But that simple description, it barely scratches the surface. The reality was, he had a long history of getting fired from jobs, usually for aggressive behavior. He was also dealing with a lot physically. He'd had polio as a kid, and a more recent motorcycle accident left him with this uncontrollable twitch in his arm. That twitch made it impossible for him to do the one job he was actually skilled at. You can just see how his life was spiraling completely out of his control.
And this instability, well, it didn't just come out of nowhere. It really started early. His mother left him when he was just 3 years old. Then, a year later, a bad fall resulted in a neck injury that kept him isolated from other kids. These experiences so early in life, abandonment, isolation, they really forged a volatile personality and set a pattern that would follow him for the rest of his life.
This wasn't just some kind of internal turmoil he was dealing with. It would spill out in these really shocking acts of violence. A neighbor reported that after their dog supposedly damaged Huberty's car, he just shot the animal in the head. An act like that, it just shows a profound lack of empathy, a terrifying capacity for cold, calculated violence.
And this right here, this is a huge piece of the puzzle. He's directly connecting his own personal and professional failures to a desire for mass violence. This wasn't some vague threat, you know? He said this to a coworker. He was linking the end of his career with a vow to inflict as much harm as possible. It was a chilling premonition of what was about to happen.
So in the days and hours right before the massacre, the warning signs became impossible to ignore. This was the final descent, where a series of critical moments presented the very last chances for someone, anyone, to intervene.
And that's the question that just hangs over this entire tragedy, isn't it? Could it have been stopped? When you look at what happened in those final 48 hours, the answer seems painfully clear.
The thing is, Huberty himself knew he was in a crisis. He actually admitted to his wife that he felt something was mentally wrong with him. And he took a huge step. He picked up the phone and he called a mental health center. He was actively seeking help. And right here is where the system just completely breaks down. A simple clerical error. The receptionist misspelled his name as Schoberty. Then she gave him a standard, non-urgent response. He was told to just wait for a call back. There was no recognition of the urgency in his voice.
48 hours. Think about that. Because he hadn't explicitly said the words, "This is an emergency," his case wasn't prioritized. For a man on the absolute brink, 2 days must have felt like an eternity. His wife later said he sat by the phone for hours, just waiting for a call that never came that day. By the next morning, his mindset had clearly shifted. The family had taken a trip to the zoo, and after they got back, he turned to his wife and said this. The window for help had closed in his mind. He told her society had their chance. And then comes this final, chilling exchange. He kissed his wife goodbye, which she said was unusual for him, and calmly told her, "I'm going hunting." His wife later said she just assumed he was going to the grocery store. He got in his car and drove 3 blocks. To McDonald's. At around 4 p.m., James Huberty walked into that restaurant, and for the next 77 minutes, he would hold 45 customers and employees captive in a completely unrelenting assault. He entered armed with an Uzi, a handgun, and a shotgun. After his first shot misfired, he shot and killed the 22-year-old manager, Neva Kane. The first 911 call came in at 4:04 p.m., but a dispatcher error sent the responding officers to a different McDonald's 2 miles away, costing precious time as the horror inside just got worse. These are the words of Albert Leas, an employee who was shot but somehow managed to escape to a utility room. He actually used his own shoelaces as a tourniquet to stop the bleeding. His account, and others like it, just give you this glimpse into the absolute terror and the incredible will to survive inside those walls.
Huberty's behavior was just erratic and unbelievably cruel. He stalked through the dining room, shooting people at random. And then, in this bizarre and terrifying moment, he walked over to the counter, turned a radio on to a music station, and just started dancing, right there, in the middle of the carnage he had created.
Amid all that terror, you see these acts of incredible bravery and moments of just unbearable loss. A pregnant woman named Jackie Reyes shielded another survivor with her own body. A father, Ronald Herrera, protected his son's friend even though he was shot 6 times. An elderly man was killed just trying to reach his wife. And in the parking lot, 3 11-year-old boys were shot and killed. Their bikes just left where they fell. So as the siege dragged on, police finally surrounded the correct location. But they were facing a really difficult tactical situation, desperately trying to find a way to end the violence.
This wasn't a simple operation at all. The restaurant's windows were tinted and made of this laminated safety glass that just spiderwebbed when it was shot, which obscured the view. The evening sun was creating this terrible glare, and from his position, Huberty could see everything outside. The SWAT team was at a huge disadvantage.
Finally, at 5:17 p.m., a SWAT sniper who was positioned on the roof of a nearby post office got his chance. Huberty moved toward the entrance where the glass had been completely blown out. The sniper was given the green light, the authorization to take the shot.
One shot ended the 77-minute siege, but the cost was just staggering. 21 people were killed, 19 more were wounded. The victims ranged in age from just 8 months to 74 years old. An entire community was just devastated. The story of Santa Cidro is about one man's personal collapse, for sure. But it's also about systemic failure and just immense tragedy. The events of that day would force police to completely reevaluate their tactics, and it changed mental health protocols. But it leaves us with this haunting question. One that's just as relevant today as it was back in 1984. When a person in crisis reaches out for help, what is our responsibility to answer?